I honestly think we should start a band as well. Right, so another special episode. This time, building up, we've been having some feedback from our beautiful viewers, our audience.
Fans! Viewers.
I'm a viewer request episode. So this one's from Justin Vingo. Justin says, didn't realise Little Monster was another feature and shot in 8 days? Hashtag inspirational. It'd be great if you could do a video about how you fund various projects. Nobody really likes to talk about the money side.
What money?
Yeah, exactly. Me and Jim had a bit of a chat about it and we just thought the first 2 features that we did, Night of the Living Dead, Resurrection, Silent Night, Bloody Night, which were privately funded. So, you know, we had a full-on investor. He went ahead and invested the films via our producer at the time. So that's how the first 2 were done. The most recent one we've done, Little Monster, is basically, we had a little break from filmmaking for 2016. I was asked to write a book, which I was incredibly honoured to be asked. So did, and then as I was doing that, I noticed that a lot of other authors that I knew and everything were into self-publishing. So I thought, okay, let's do a bit of research on self-publishing. How can I take what I've learned about self-publishing and see how it applies to film? What I would say about our first 2 films is, if they did make money, we didn't see a whole lot of it. The people who do make money either are the distributors, potentially investors. So that was a chat I had with Jim. If the people who make money are the distributors and the investors, why not be one of those 2 in addition to making the films? Or even better, why not be both? We are the investors we self-invested on Little Monster. Now that sounds insane, and the main bit of advice you always get is never invest in your own films. Finding investors, crowdfunding, all of that stuff is a full-time job in itself. That's not to knock it, but that's not an easy way, and crowdfunding, as I think more and more filmmakers are finding, is an absolute hassle. And it's not one, to be honest, that I was interested in getting into. I'd never say never. It might be something that we look at further down the line. But with this one, we just kind of thought, let's go ahead and let's invest it.
If you're going to jump into a project, and particularly if you're going to finance that project yourselves, you've got to understand what it is to make that film. So if you're going to make a film, you've got to be realistic about the film, the story. Can you actually logistically make it, and is it within your means to make it? So when I read Jim's book, the locations we could get access to, wasn't a big cast, wasn't any fancy special effects needed, the genre was right up our street. So logistically, we could make it, and we could make it for not much money. So we broke it down.
So it's his fault.
My fault. We broke it down. We invited Thomas Savory to come on board with us at Mad Science Films.
Jim had been working with Tom over 2016 on the short film Billing.
Yeah, and the key is to work with people who also understand that philosophy. People who believe they have all the time in the world, or they can make any script come to life with what they got. Well, they're just unrealistic. How you really test yourself as a filmmaker is where you use what you have, and other people may have, and then you bring all that to the forefront to make your film, to make that vision come to reality.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the key thing, is that if we hadn't made the other films using the methods that we did, I wouldn't have felt confident doing what we did on Little Monster.
Yeah.
We built up an amazing group of people in terms of cast and crew that we could go to who'd worked with us before, who enjoyed working with us, and we could go to them absolutely and kind of say, look guys, this is the score, this is what we're doing. Now what is different on the Little Monster shoot is we did actually pay people up front. Now on previous projects that I've worked on, and I know it's common practice still, were deferred payments. Now, unfortunately, some of the projects that we'd worked on, and we're not going to name names because we don't want to get sued. Not everybody always gets paid on deferred payments, and that was a butthurt I didn't want to get involved in. I didn't want to attach to this project. So I was absolutely transparent about it. I came up to people and I said, look guys, if they were heads of departments that we were going to work with, I said, look, here's a upfront fee. You'll get paid on the last day, the day after the last day of filming, because I was shattered on that last day. the day after the last day of filming, and we'll cover expenses. The budget of Little Monster, and this is exclusive, is 3,000 quid. I know. And that's with paying people up front. And it goes back to what, Jim, you said in an earlier episode about, you know, it being about the conflict of being in the drama, not having it set in a million different locations, which are impossible to film in.
And for me, some of the biggest films that I list, particularly in the horror genre, they do that. It's all within a small circle of characters in one or two locations, and you really focus on the drama and the story, and I think that's key.
So the book was a happy accident, or I think, as we said in previous episodes, I still write with that kind of headspace anyway. Yeah. So we had that project, we sat down, it was a small cast. Again, it's really, Little Monster, it was really about like the two parents. So it was casting the mum and the dad in Little Monster, and everything else kind of came from that. We shot it in 8 days, and that's where the money goes, is like, it's money, but in a roundabout way, it's really always about time. And being, you know, the money bit is being able to afford to bring everybody from A to B over X number of days. We will need to do a pickup day, and we'll get to that in a bit. But the main part of the shoot was 8 days, and I would say, and this is only something I've learned, you know, over us making films for, you know, kind of 10 years, pre-production is key. We planned this down to the individual shot and who needed to be on location for a specific shot. Excel spreadsheets, that's what I used a lot of. I mean, you know, we broke it down, obviously, in terms of scene. Once we had the script, which we locked, broke it down into scenes. We used I used Final Draft anyway, in terms of breaking it down and, you know, pulling out the individual scenes. Then I'm sure there's a better program, but I just used Excel because that's what I had. Individual shots, and then within shot lists, the individual shots, I actually made a note of what actors are going to be in those shots. So in a master, obviously, it might feature all of the characters, but then we might have close-ups. From that, then we prioritised. Yeah. So we prioritised what shots we needed when. Now, there were various restrictions. Certain actors weren't available on all days and all of this kind of thing. But because we'd had it in such detail of what shots, what actors were in, we were able to kind of order it by that using, you know, like a basic filter on Excel, and kind of go, okay, well, we can shoot all of this scene without this main actor as long as you get X, Y, and Z. And that's how we did it in 8 days. We had a great first AD, Dan Bailey. Reworking with a bunch of people we've worked with before. Victoria Rodway was our production manager. Didn't actually make it to set at all, but the work she did behind the scenes was vital. Brilliant. Vicky came up with the idea of actually changing the opening of the book to make it more straightforward, but still very visual in terms of setting it inside a car. Originally, Gareth was kind of commuting via public transport and everything. That would have been a nightmare to shoot.
That is a great way of approaching a film, is to break it down. If something doesn't quite work because you can't get the location, well, how can you rework it that you can shoot the scene without jeopardising the story?
And what was brilliant is working with people that I'd worked with time and time again. Vicky had worked on all of my features. Jim as well had worked on all my features. Because I'd written the book, sometimes I was too close to the project, but we had pre-production meetings. I think we had 4 or 5 pre-production meetings with heads of departments, let alone just, you know, me and Jim kind of getting together anyway. And we'd absolutely pull it apart, and we'd kind of go, all right, look, you know, this is going to be a nightmare. And because I was too close to the project, you know, having Vicky, Jim, Tom in the room, they came up with alternatives which were brilliant. And I'd like to think I wasn't particularly precious about it. You know, when Vicky came up with that suggestion, it didn't take me long to kind of go.
But I think one of the biggest assets you should have as a director, one of the biggest attributes you should have as a director, is the ability to not have the ideas. Well, obviously you need ideas as a great director, but to understand when a good idea is coming your way. And some directors are too precious. There's too much ego there. They don't really, they're just bat it away. Don't come to me with this.
Whereas I know that I'm winging it the whole time. It's all smoke and mirrors. I just get really talented people on board. Jefferson Von Stock.
Go Jeff. Go Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. And Hal Rose on long shots earlier in the year, and I absolutely wanted to bring those guys on. Yeah. One of the first things that we did was got basically all the heads of departments in a room together, and we started talking about colour schemes and something like that. And I thought that's one of the things I'm most proud about Little Monster, is visually it looks amazing, just in terms of Jim's lighting, working in tandem with Hal's set design and Jeff's costumes.
Yeah.
That's something which, you usually don't get, a chance to do. Pretty much the DP would just turn up on set and see what costumes had already been chosen or whatever and have to light round that. But because we went in there with a very specific colour scheme in mind, Jim was able to do it. And just certain scenes, we'll drop a little clip of some of the hospital stuff, they just pop.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. And so hats off to all heads of departments that we got, that working together. And pre-production. I'd say that's the only way you can make low budget films on the scale that we did for a feature, is just planning it to the nth degree, but being ready to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and a plan E.
Yeah, because it never goes to absolute plan when you're on set. But if there's anything you have any trepidations about as you come closer to shooting, do some screen tests, test things out, see how things look on camera, see how things are going to pay off when you're doing it for real.
Jim, you did a number of lighting tests.
Yeah, for driving scenes, obviously we haven't got the rigs to actually drive the car and get the shot, so we staged it in Jim's driveway, so it was a static car, and then we just had a series of lights with some gels for certain scenes, and we just
some subtle smoke, some not so subtle smoke, which we didn't end up using. But again, it's testing that kind of stuff out.
It's all trial and error.
Jim obviously was able to test certain stuff out without having to drag all of the actors and all the people on set.
Yeah.
So by the time we got to set, boom, we knew what we were doing and we could do it. That's not to say the shoot went smoothly. There were issues.
Yeah, of course.
As there would be with any shoot. Certain shots took far too long. But then again, other shots, like which we'd had factored in more time, we blasted through. For example, Mel Stevens, who'd been in all of my films since Final
Girl,
we had a scene with Mel, was about 2 pages. We blasted through that in about less than half an hour. She was on set for half an hour. I think we shot it in about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
But again, that's because we knew, Mel, we'd worked with a number of times, the other actors as well, camera crew, sound, everybody knew what they were doing. And so, boom, we hit the ground running. It was a 5-minute thing to get to location, so I had the actors in the car with me. They ran lines, boom, they nailed it, great.
Yeah.
Got to set and shot it. And it's just about leaving the shoot time for just shooting. Planning everything else out in advance, because you don't want to be spending a huge amount of time figuring out stuff on the set. The last thing you want to turn up
and start going, how are we doing this again? Dan is 3 shots ahead of us.
Yeah.
Me and Tom are working together with the lighting, setting it up. What do we need? Where's the light coming from?
On the day, as a director, for me, I wanted to be in that shot, which is why you get a great first AD. Now, in pre-production, obviously, I was thinking about the whole shoot. But the last thing I want to be doing when I'm working on a shot is thinking about the next shot. So everybody else is on the ball with that. I'm absolutely focused in the moment, focusing on the performance that we're getting from people, or if there's a certain camera move or anything like that, making sure we're getting what we need to tell the story. That's why you get a great first AD who's allowing you to think about that, and they are thinking about the next shot and all the ingredients that you need to get that next shot.
Yeah, that trust is there.
And it's working with people that you trust. Absolutely, I'd say the priorities for crew is, firstly, do you trust them? Are they a douche? Don't work with them. That's number one. Okay. Number 2 is talent. That might seem back to front or whatever, but if they're a really talented diva, it's not with the house on a low budget shoot. It really isn't. It's going to cost you. If it's your first feature, I'd always suggest working with a separate producer rather than trying to do it yourself.
Yeah.
With us, because we'd worked on a number of other feature films, and there were 3 of us, we tackled it as a producer, and I'd say we did a good job. I'm happy with what we ended up on screen. Everybody was happy. We nailed it. That is a massive leap, though. Speak to a bunch of other directors. Find some producers out there or whatever. If you got a great idea, hit us up. You never know. One more tip, which I'd always say in terms of when you're approaching casting crew, is try put them off the project. Be absolutely brutal. If it's a low budget shoot, say, look, we're going to be working long hours. if it's a horror film, you know, at night or whatever, it's going to be long hours, it's going to be dark, it's going to be cold, it's going to be wet. If you're shooting in Wales, it's going to be wet. Don't raise people's expectations unrealistically, because then you'll just have a bunch of hassle from people chasing you afterwards.
Yeah.
With this one, we kind of went, look, it's going to be a brutal shoot. We're going to try to do it in 8 days. You know, all I can promise is we'll have a lot of fun on set, and we did. And it's people that would work with us again and again, as shown by the fact that, you know, a lot of the cast and crew are people that we've worked with time and time again. So make it a fun set, but obviously be efficient and get stuff done. Jim and myself have been making films for 10 plus years now.
A long time. That's sometimes difficult to find within this industry. A lot of people fall out, a lot of people, it's almost like finding the one, isn't it? So that one person you want to make films with, because they just get you. You understand where you're coming from. Quite often these duos or you know, trios of filmmakers will go out and they'll venture into some projects and then they'll just fall apart because they've had a slightly bit of success. Yeah, man. We're very lucky we found one another, Jim. Can you make love hearts come on the screen?
Can we get Jim a girlfriend? I'm starting to worry.
But in the real world, I'm so lonely.
I love you too, Jim.
Been a lot of chocolate lately.
That's not where I was expecting this episode to go, but Justin, I hope that was helpful for you. Bonus question. So, after Jim's educating Jim section, we had a request over on YouTube.
Kuram Chowdhury!
Okay, Jim, do you want to read this?
So Kuram says, I want to see Jim in a bathtub with bubbles. I think that's you actually, not me.
Oh.
I think it's the episode we were discussing, I mentioned about you doing something in a bathtub.
Listening to metal.
That's right, yeah. And he carries on with, also a sponge. Can you pronounce that for us, Jimbo, on the next episode? Well, we're a bit late with this. So sponge first. So what's Kuram?
Wait, just in case he wants me to do it as well. Sponge.
Jim saw this question and was a bit miffed by its meaning because it seems like some Da Vinci Code-esque riddle.
Oh, I mean, I was up for pronouncing it. I was just like, alright, it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird.
So I'm going to give you the background to this. Why is Kuram asking me to say sponge? Because many years ago in high school, often you would have to read the book in front of you, the textbook, and you'd all take it in turns, and it was a boring session. So we're in history class, and I was daydreaming, looking out the window, as each members of the class were reading out certain paragraphs in this book, and it came to my turn to read. Of course, the word sponging. Sponging, and I pronounced it as sponging. Immediately regretted it as everybody turned around and started laughing. And it's been a bane in my existence ever since. So yeah, sponge. Thank you, Kuram.
Sponge. Let's get the entrance again. I mean, he wasn't that young. I mean, thanks, dude. That was. I mean, I played the figure. Okay.
Do you want to tweak it at all?